On this episode of Newt's World, in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee, home to Dolly Parton's famous family amusement park, Dollywood, exists another amazing organization, the American Eagle Foundation, located in Kodak. Founded in the 1980s by several passionate conservationists, the American Eagle Foundation is now a non-profit organization inspiring the global community to guard and protect the bald eagle and all birds of prey. Their mission is to conserve, educate, and protect. Here to discuss the American Eagle Foundation, I'm really pleased to welcome my guest, Jessica Hall, Executive Director. Jessica, welcome, and thank you for joining me on Newt's World.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. We really appreciate it.
Well, it's great fun, and as I watched the Commanders versus Eagles football game, I realized I was watching what we're going to talk about, so this is going to be fun. How did the American Eagle Foundation begin, and what inspired its creation?
The American Eagle Foundation began in the 1980s after a very passionate wildlife resource agent named Bob Hatcher started educating Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency on the plight of the bald eagle. And people came together through Cumberland Wildlife Refuge and other concerned citizens to start actively really reigniting the public passion around our nation's symbol. And as a result, the National Organization to Protect America's Eagles was born, and that eventually became American Eagle Foundation.
What was Hatcher's contribution? He clearly was a driving force.
He was an incredible driving force. He was not only passionate about our nation's symbol, but the fact that they are an indicator species for how our environment is operating. And he was an avid fisherman, and so understanding that bald eagles' habitats are naturally close to rivers, lakes, and streams, he wanted to try to protect those habitats in order to enjoy his hobby.
And wasn't the use of DDT in large scale a significant factor in weakening eggshells and almost driving birds of prey to extinction?
It absolutely was. DDT, the consequences of using it in households was horrific to the bald eagle population. In fact, we ended up with less than 40 nesting pairs in the lower 48 states of the United States of America during its use.
And how many pairs would you guess there are today?
At last count, I would say that we have upwards of maybe 400,000 bald eagles back in the wild now. Bald eagle wildlife cams are also a very popular option to view online. And we see that the bald eagle is flourishing, that these cams are showing us that they're continuing to mate successfully and those eaglets are continuing to fledge successfully. There are still some threats facing the bald eagle today, but it is significantly different than it was in the height of DDT usage.
Callista went to Luther College in Decorah, Iowa, and they have a bald eagle cam for an eagle nest. Huge number of people watch it.
Absolutely.
It's a great example of modern technology encouraging people to help preserve something that's very ancient.
It is. And in fact, we saw a resurgence in people enjoying these cameras during the COVID pandemic. When people were at home, they would turn their screens on and they would want to feel some sort of connection to our wildlife and to the outdoors. And so people started watching eagle cams in record numbers, into the hundreds of millions.
If they go to American Eagle Foundation's website, can they then find the eagle cams?
They absolutely can. We have several. We have a northeastern Florida cam that has a very popular and flourishing nest there. I think we have over 20 eaglets that have successfully fledged from that nest back into the wilds of Florida. We also have a cam at Eagle Mountain Sanctuary, which is unique and one of a kind. Eagle Mountain Sanctuary, which is actually located at Dollywood Theme Park. is the nation's largest bald eagle sanctuary. So whenever we have an injured bald eagle that can't survive in the wild, we provide a home for it there at the theme park. It's a 38,000 square foot aviary, as close to the natural wilds as you can get, right in the heart of the Smoky Mountains.
So when people go to Dollywood, they can go look at the Eagle Sanctuary.
They sure can. They can go see the eagles and get up close to our nation's symbol, and it helps inspire and cultivate this passion for bald eagles and patriotism.
One of the things about the American Eagle Foundation, as I understand it, is that you really have spent a lot of time rehabilitating injured birds of prey.
We have, and we're currently trying to raise money to build the nation's largest wildlife bald eagle rehabilitation hospital. So 2 years ago, we bought 48 acres at the base of the Smoky Mountains in order to create a hospital here. It is very centrally located off of the I-40 corridor so that people can get injured bald eagles to us quickly and we can provide the help we need. And so we're currently running a capital campaign to raise money to build that hospital right here.
Do you take care of birds of prey other than eagles?
We do. We have turkey vultures. We have black vultures. Both of those animals are incredibly misunderstood. And those are really our nation's cleanup crew. They neutralize diseases such as anthrax and botulism. And we also have hawks and corvids and any number of birds of prey you can find here at American Eagle Foundation.
What is it that people misunderstand about vultures?
I think people naturally associate vultures as kind of this nasty animal because they do see them on the sides of the roads eating carrion. But what these animals truly do is they take anything that is carrying disease and they neutralize it and create a kind of harmonious environmental balance. In fact, some Native American tribes, particularly the Cherokee, they referred to the vulture as the peace eagle, not because this bird was a symbol of any type of warrior mentality, but because it could neutralize death and turn it into energy for life.
They must have very powerful stomachs.
They do have powerful stomachs. In fact, they're some people would say disgusting. I think it's kind of unique. A way to ward off predators is they actually vomit as predators are coming near them, and the smell of that vomit is so powerful that it deters any predator that was thinking about coming after them.
What kind of animals prey upon a vulture?
You know, that's a great question, but hyenas, coyotes, and other animals would still try to prey upon vultures.
I have to ask you, because I was watching the ball game the other night. The Philadelphia Eagles, I think, had Challenger there, didn't they?
We actually had Lincoln there. Lincoln is Challenger's predecessor. Challenger flew for the Philadelphia Eagles for many, many years, but we retired him in 2018 due to cataracts. And so with his cataracts and the onset of cataracts, he wasn't able to locate the Skycam wires as easily as he was in the past. And so we made the decision to retire him and began training Lincoln to take over. And this was Lincoln's, excuse the pun, rookie season with the Philadelphia Eagles, and he did a fantastic job. We did 7 flights for them. He nailed every single one, and I cannot say enough good things about that organization and what they do. From the players to the administrative folks at the Philadelphia Eagles, they have absolutely welcomed us with open arms.
Challenger sort of became the symbol of what you're doing. What was Challenger's background and how did that develop?
Challenger was blown out of a nest in Louisiana as an eaglet, very young eaglet. And he was found by a well-meaning citizen who took him home and was wanting to just kind of raise him. I don't know if they mistook him maybe for another animal, but they quickly realized they had a bald eagle on their hands and surrendered him to a local vet. The vet tried releasing him, and he was found on a fisherman's dock begging for food, and a local fisherman was feeding him. And at that point, U.S. Fish and Wildlife were called in, and they realized that they had an imprinted bald eagle on their hands, and he was surrendered into our care.
So you have a very close relationship with Fish and Wildlife.
We do. We have a very close relationship with the United States Fish and Wildlife, the United States Department of Agriculture, as well as their local counterpart, the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency. Once Challenger was surrendered to us, we had a trainer named John Stokes who had the idea that if he could train Challenger to free fly using some falconry techniques, that it would be a great opportunity to show people the majesty of a bald eagle in flight and maybe help people to realize why they wanted to save these animals. And Challenger was actually the first eagle trained to free fly in stadiums, even before the University of Auburn ever flew their first war eagle. Challenger was the first. In fact, John went to the University of Auburn and helped teach them some of the techniques that they use to fly their war eagle to this day.
That's great. So War Eagle, in a sense, came with Challenger.
Yes, I think Auburn always had a bald eagle at their games present, but it was always on a glove. Challenger kind of inspired that new tradition that they have today of flying war eagle before the games.
I remember being at the Portland Zoo one year, and they allowed me to have an eagle on my arm. Eagles are really big.
They are. Eagles are big animals, and I don't think people realize how big they are until you get up close to them. And their wingspan can reach up to 6.5 feet, which is just massive. It's taller than most of us, certainly taller than me. And they're tall animals. When they're on your arm and you're holding your arm up, I mean, they could easily tower over your head. Now, the cool thing about eagles, and you obviously witnessed this firsthand, is that they don't necessarily weigh very much. So Lincoln is around 7.5 pounds. Their bodies are somewhat hollow, which enables them to have greater aerodynamics.
When I watch the eagle soar over the football stadium, how hard is it to train the eagle to then come back?
That's such a great question. So we use a combination of falconry techniques and modern training methods. So we're a bird first choice facility, meaning that the bird behaviors tell us what that bird wants to do and how they want to act that day. So if we feel like the bird is not wanting to come out of its room or doesn't feel like training that day, we do not force that behavior. We allow that bird to tell us what it wants to do. And we have those behaviors down pat through observation, very careful observation and bonding with these animals. So once you take a combination of these ancient falconry techniques and you marry them with modern methods, you can kind of create this really unique relationship dynamic between the handler and the bird. And it's a trust dynamic between human and wild animal, because these animals are still class 2 predators and they're an apex predator in their own right. So it takes a lot of time, energy, and effort, but once those techniques are incorporated and bonding time with that bird happens, you can tell when a bird is eager and wanting to do more. And you try to encourage that behavior, and you try to give that animal time and the opportunity to do the things that it wants to do, such as fly or play or have the kind of enrichment that it needs. The cool thing about bald eagles, again, is that their natural state isn't necessarily flying. Their natural state is perching. They perch and they watch, and they wait until the right moment to hunt. They are definitely opportunistic predators. And so perching is really their natural state, and that's what you'll see a lot in wildlife cams. You'll see them perching in the trees, sitting in their nest, and flying to get food when they need it.
I take it, though, that each eagle has its own personality.
They do, and we try not to assign human characteristics to their personalities, But sometimes we do. Lincoln is definitely what we would consider being a very young, very eager bird, wanting to prove himself, wanting to push himself. Challenger, obviously, is an older bird. He's enjoying his retirement. He recently underwent very successful cataract surgery at the University of Tennessee Veterinary Clinic, and he enjoys taking his daily baths. He still flies in his aviary, which are some of the largest aviaries in the nation. He still flies in there. He plays in there. He has lots of enrichment. He still gets the opportunity to exercise when he wants to, but he also enjoys, the occasional piece of salmon or rabbit and just hanging out in his aviary, kind of what I would equate with sitting on the porch watching everything else happen around him.
How old do they have to be for you to consider training them?
So we operate the sanctuary here, and so all of our animals are deemed non-releasable by U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So we used to have a breeding program. We were one of the only facilities in the nation allowed to breed eagles during the height of the crisis, and we released over 190 bald eagles back into the wild. But now we no longer breed bald eagles, so any eagle that comes to us is an eagle that's been injured. We recently received 2 juvenile bald eagles. One, the nest that the eaglet was in, the tree blew over into the river in a storm. The eaglet was rescued, and it was still a juvenile. And in the water, it struggled a bit and had to be given to veterinary care. And in veterinary care, it was there for about 6 weeks, just trying to get all the water that it had aspirated up out of its system. And during that time, even though you're trying to be very careful and make sure that you're not imprinting on this bird, unfortunately, that bird was imprinted on, which is what we mean when we say that, is associating humans with food. So the hacking instinct, which is their instinct to hunt, never kicks in. And at that point, when a bird associates humans with food, it's deemed non-releasable, because if you try to release it into the wild, it would fly to humans and try to get food, which is definitely not something that is safe.
So it basically never learned to hunt wildlife. It learned to go to people for food.
Exactly. And as a result, it was deemed non-releasable and given to our care. So that eagle is physically perfect, but unable to survive on its own in the wild. And it's still a juvenile eagle, which means that the white head and the white tail hasn't fully grown in yet. So it still has brown feathering. The white head and the tail don't come in till about 5 years of age. So we start very slowly by just building a relationship with that bird. And when we go into the aviary to feed the bird, we might sit in the corner and just sit while the bird plays in its aviary and flies around, just so that it gets used to us and understands that we're not a threat to it. And eventually the bird will become curious enough to approach the human in its aviary and maybe start taking food off the glove. And then we'll try feeding it on the glove, and then doing behaviors like step-ups, where we encourage the eagle to step up onto the glove. And although these are also training behaviors, it's also a way to provide the right kind of vet care. So we have physicals biannually on all of our birds, and we need the bird to be able to step up on the glove so that we can check its keel, make sure that it has the right feather coloring, make sure that it has the right wingspan, and also to weigh the eagle. So although these are training techniques, it's not just to teach the animal necessarily how to fly in a stadium, but also to provide the behaviors that we need in order to keep it safe and healthy.
So you have these folks who are out here doing an amazing job of handling eagles, which are an art form of its own. How long does it take to learn to be a handler?
Generally, handlers would go to school for something like biology or wildlife sciences or any number of those degrees, and then they would go into the field of zoology. And a handler could come to us with a bachelor's degree and then be trained in American Eagle Foundation training methods and techniques. And it could take anywhere from 12 to 24 months to graduate from a screech owl, handling a screech owl, all the way up to handling a bald eagle. Again, you really have to build relationships with those birds, and you have to have a dedicated mindset to spend time in an aviary with a class 2 predator while it's flying around you, and learn to trust that animal and build trust in that animal for you.
Do you ever feed them live food, or is that too dangerous?
We don't feed them live food. We only source our food from humanely sourced vendors. So our food does come in already dead, and it's usually frozen. We provide a very varied diet. So we try to get as close to the wild as possible. Rabbits, quail, fish, and rat, mice. Those are all things that would naturally fall into a diet of a bald eagle.
And historically, this may be a comment on my limited experience, but I identify them as really good fish hunters. Maybe because you can catch them out in the open on rivers and lakes, but it's amazing to watch them.
Absolutely. We actually have a lot of mountain trout that we feed our birds, because that would be a very natural thing that they would have in the wild here. So we do source from a local trout farm, and their main diet is fish, but we do try to keep it varied for them for several reasons. It keeps their beaks healthy and strong, and, sometimes you feel like pizza, sometimes you feel like a hamburger.
Can you keep the eagles together, or do they have to be separate?
Well, eagles are naturally social creatures. So, for instance, at Eagle Mountain Sanctuary in Dollywood, those eagles are together, and they enjoy that kind of interaction. They're very social animals, and eagles do mate for life. Now, if their mate were killed or missing, they may mate again, but when they have the opportunity, they mate for life.
If this is going to be a lifetime relationship, what is kind of the dating process?
So they do find each other in the wild during mating season, which runs at different times throughout the U.S., but basically they would be in each other's territory, and they are attracted to the heat signatures of other bald eagles. Once they find each other, they might perform a mating dance, which is where they will lock talons in the air and kind of do a spiral. They will start to build a nest together, and at that point, they become what we call a mated bonded pair.
Have you ever dealt with golden eagles, or only with bald eagles?
We do have 2 golden eagles here. Golden eagles are incredibly beautiful animals. They actually fly higher than bald eagles, and they're just absolutely gorgeous. If you have the opportunity to see a golden eagle up close, you'll be amazed at the coloring.
Now, do you ever deal with osprey?
We actually have an osprey here in our care. This particular osprey, her name is Styx, S-T-Y-X. She was found on a platform here locally. The local energy company had built a platform for the ospreys to nest, and she had fallen in between the cracks of the platform, and her legs were splayed. And unfortunately, that injury prevented her from living into the wild. So she was rescued and brought to us. She is a fantastic educational ambassador. And I would even argue that osprey are just incredible anglers, fisher. The things that an osprey can do are just really, really unique.
It's amazing to watch an osprey going after fish.
And they have this kind of naturally, what I would almost say, menacing air about them. Their eyes are penetratingly yellow or orange. They're not a bird you want to mess with, for sure. And osprey and eagles are known to kind of fight over territory.
Are they more aggressive than eagles?
I would say that they're very protective of their territory, and they don't want anyone coming into their area, and they will absolutely fight for their space.
Benjamin Franklin wanted the American bird to be a turkey, which I think would somehow have been a totally different experience. How did the bald eagle beat out the turkey?
We're really not sure. We hear so much different lore about that interaction. I wish I could ask Benjamin Franklin why he wanted the turkey. But I think the bald eagle beat out the turkey just because of its majesty. There's a naturally regal air about the bald eagle. Even perched in a tree, they have this unique characteristic of majesty, I guess, is really the best way to describe it. And I think in that time frame, they were probably very prevalent in the wild. They were beautiful birds, and people were most likely just enamored of them and felt like this would be a great representation of this beautiful fledgling country. And I think they chose wisely.
There's no question in terms of just sheer beauty. But Franklin did not like eagles. He said they're basically cowardly birds and that the turkey is magnificent and you can eat it. So it's one of those things. But I think for most Americans, there is something about the look of a bald eagle. That's kind of what you want America to be. It's courageous. It looks directly at you. It's magnificent as an animal.
I'm not sure why he felt like the bald eagle was cowardly, because they certainly are not. They're beautiful animals. And another really cool thing that I think a lot of people don't know is that bald eagles are endemic to North America. So they don't exist anywhere else in the world other than Canada and the United States. Now, there are other eagles like sea eagles who look similar, but the bald eagle exists here. And so I think ultimately we made absolutely the right choice. And it's represented on the Great Seal, on the presidential flag, and most armed services flags. It's also such a unifying symbol and not divisive at all. In fact, during the 70s, 80s, and 90s, when the crisis around the bald eagle was at its peak, all of America unified to help save the bald eagle. We all rallied together to keep this animal from the brink of extinction. And I think that's just something that Americans can be very, very proud of.
It was put on the endangered species list in 1967, and 40 years later, on 2007, it came off. Once you let them alone, they have a natural pattern of reproducing and creating huge numbers. Somebody estimated there are like 71,000 nesting pairs in the continental U.S.
Yeah. We want to keep that animal alive and well because, as I mentioned before, they are indicator species for how our environment around us is operating. And if the bald eagle is flourishing, you can feel good knowing that the environment around it is flourishing. And they are species that, again, live on rivers, lakes, streams, close to natural sources of water. And it's a great indicator for how our fish species are flourishing. So knowing that they are making a very popular comeback is something that we can all really feel excited about.
I've noticed that there's an increasing number of collisions. To what extent are drones potentially dangerous to eagles?
I would say drones pose a risk to our bald eagles. Wind turbines also pose a risk. There have been several collisions with wind turbines. I think our bald eagles, there are several threats that still face them today. I certainly don't think they're as prevalent as the threat that DDT posed, but we still have threats, particularly highly pathogenic avian influenza, which is making a comeback in the United States. I think that is something that we definitely need to keep an eye on. Monofilament line, we still have entangled bald eagles in our rivers and lakes where monofilament is left behind. So I think we have to really encourage our sportsmen and women and our outdoors people to recycle that monofilament. We support hunting and fishing as valuable conservation tools. We think they are valuable conservation tools and they help keep the environment regulated, but we just definitely want to remind people to recycle that monofilament. And then lead poisoning is another big threat that bald eagles face. And A lot of times when hunters might use lead shot and leave pieces of a carcass behind that has lead in it, and a bald eagle might stumble upon it, a vulture might stumble upon it and feed upon the carcass, that lead gets in their system and then inevitably will kill the bald eagle or the vulture. So those are still things that we as an organization try to educate people on today.
I didn't realize that the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act goes all the way back to 1940. I mean, that we've had a very long period of being concerned about these.
Absolutely. And it's an act that we bring up probably on a daily basis here. We take care of protected species, and something that we're very proud of. And these species are still protected. They're not necessarily on the endangered species list, but they're still protected here in the U.S. It's illegal to own a golden or bald eagle feather. You know, it does carry a fine. In fact, when we clean our aviaries, if a feather has molted, we keep it and then compile it, log it, and send it to the Federal Reserve, where the Federal Reserve then distributes them to local and nationally federally recognized tribes for ceremonial purposes.
How far away do you get eagles from?
We've gotten bald eagles from Alaska, and we've gotten bald eagles from Florida. We've gotten bald eagles from Arizona, really all over the world. We got one from New York last year. We accept them from all over the United States.
You've been taking eagles to a lot of different events. What would you say was the most exciting?
We have done a lot of events, but I would say probably the most exciting and meaningful for us are veterans events or children's events. Watching a veteran look at a bald eagle, and again, bald eagles are represented on most United States Armed Forces flags. They see that bald eagle and they see characteristics in that eagle that resonate within themselves and their service to the United States. And it's a powerful, powerful thing to witness. Flying for football games is great, and it allows us to educate on a mass scale, but seeing that interaction between a veteran or an active service member with a bald eagle is probably the most powerful, beautiful thing I've ever seen.
What's next for the American Eagle Foundation, and what are things people can get involved with to help the American Eagle Foundation?
Oh, man, it's a wonderful question. So definitely our rehabilitation hospital is next on the agenda. We want to open that rehab hospital hopefully by the tail end of 2026, which is also America 250. We think that would be a great time to really be able to announce that those threats that still face bald eagles today, we're prepared and ready to support those animals. I think also we've recently seen a resurgence in patriotism. For a while, we were kind of forgotten as American Eagle Foundation, and people are starting to hear our name again and recognize the work that we do, and we just hope that folks will continue to want to support the American Eagle Foundation through donations, going to our website and learning more. At our new facility, we actually host field trips for all of our kids in the area, and we can also provide those same field trips digitally for schools that aren't near us, and we can bring a bird into our digital classroom and interact with students across the United States of America. We really want to educate that next generation. As you and I have been talking, I'm Gen X, so I grew up recognizing the bald eagle as an endangered species, and now it's off the list, and there's so many other animals that are on the list that the bald eagle's kind of been forgotten. And even my children didn't have the kind of reverence and awe for the bald eagle that I did. And so we really want to educate and cultivate a passion for our nation's symbol in the next generation.
That's really great. Well, look, I want to thank you for joining me and for sharing the story of the American Eagle Foundation. Our listeners can find out more by visiting your website at eagles.org, and I encourage them to do so.
Thank you so much. It was an honor and a pleasure speaking with you today.
Thank you to my guest, Jessica Hall. You can learn more about the American Eagle Foundation on our show page at newtsworld.com. Newt's World is produced by Gingrich 360 and iHeartMedia. Our executive producer is Garnsey Slum. Our researcher is Rachel Peterson. The artwork for the show was created by Steve Pendley. Special thanks to the team at Gingrich 360. If you've been enjoying Newt's World, I hope you'll go to Apple Podcasts and both rate us with 5 stars and give us a review so others can learn what it's all about. Right now, listeners of Newt's World can sign up for my 3 free weekly columns at gingrich360.com/newsletter. I'm Newt Gingrich. This is Newt's World.